Kevin McCarthy has pulled it out on the 15th ballot and has been elected Speaker of the House. Today on Political Excess, we're going to cover this story and talk about what might be ahead. So first off, it took 15 rounds of voting. It was after midnight, and there were still 5 Republicans that voted present, but that was enough for McCarthy to secure the win. Now, I already talked about some of this in a previous video, but I think this was a little bit overblown in my opinion by the media. I know they love to make it seem like there's infighting, even on both sides, but especially in this situation. My view is that it took a few days, but always having a unanimous, unified opinion, I don't see how that's necessarily a good thing. The Democrats do look strong voting for Hakeem Jeffries every time, but so what? In an important decision like this, I don't think thinking alike is always the best route. Sometimes the minority opinion is the correct opinion, and it can be drowned out by louder voices, and usually those louder voices are the establishment. So I do like seeing the establishment sweat it out a little bit, also on both sides of the aisle. My understanding from the progressive viewpoint is that back in 2018, when the Democrats took control of the House, the so-called future squad members, the hardline progressives, they caved way too easily to Nancy Pelosi and the establishment. They wanted a Medicare for all vote, they wanted the $15 minimum wage vote, and they should have done some of these tactics the Republicans are doing. Instead, they ended up more or less falling in line, and over the years, they seem to have kind of morphed with the establishment, only rarely setting themselves apart these days. So that is unfortunate. When you want to get into office, you make these grand claims and tout what your vision is, and you're going to be the one to stand up to it all. But then once you finally get one foot in the door, there's going to be all kinds of pressure to just cave in. It's a lot easier path to just be on the inside than actually stick up and fight for the people you thought were being neglected and on the outside all these years. So I think there's some overlap between those progressives before they got into office as well as these Republican holdouts. They're not a fan of the establishment. There's a couple things they agree on. Most other issues, though, they're not really going to agree on. I think both of the establishments, a lot of the media, and most of the moderates, they think any side holding out like that is an embarrassment and it's holding up democracy, etc. But then if it was somebody with their principles doing it, they would largely change their tune. So it all depends on what the demands are. And we could switch over here to The Hill article, and this goes into some of it. A lot of the concessions that McCarthy made do seem to be centered around having one member being allowed to force a vote to vacate the chair and elect a different speaker. Apparently that's what it used to be, but Nancy Pelosi changed that back in the day. I don't know why that really never got much attention. One vote is probably a little bit too laxed, but then again, if it was in place all these years, you never know. Maybe it was fine. Now, one of the other demands is wanting to have spending cuts in conjunction with any debt ceiling raises. Now, to me, this is not going to be popular if there's talks about cutting entitlements of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That's always going to be a non-starter. There's all kinds of reforms you could do to cut out waste, fraud, and abuse. You can also streamline processes, but to cut medical or any financial care from people that actually need it, there's no way that's going to work. Nobody should have to worry about where they're going to get their medical care from. So that would be a blunder by Republicans if they go in that direction. They should talk about closing corporate loopholes, the carried interest loophole, making sure the real wealthy elites stop getting around some of these taxes. And one thing Republicans really have to do is they have to understand that there is a difference between somebody making 10, 20, 40 grand a year and somebody making 600, 800 grand a year. One of those people is really going to be struggling, and the other one is not really going to be struggling nearly in the same way as the other. So the old days of Republicans just talking about tax cuts, that's a losing formula. Yes, they should look into and secure the border, and other issues like China, crime, the Ukraine aid, make sure everything is accounted for, look for any corruption, but don't make cuts to the programs that are extremely popular. Now, if there's defense cuts, that's something that can make sense. A lot of times that defense budget is overly inflated. We know the defense contractors are making out every year. They have to find some reason to have more money funneled into them. So that's another thing Republicans should not be opposed to, in my opinion. Now, another concession that I'm not really clear on is if some of these holdouts have been given more favorable committee positions. That I generally think should go by seniority. There could be an exception here or there, But if you've only been in the House for 1 or 2 terms, I would not expect you to be able to lead a committee at this point. Now, if we switch over here to Mother Jones, here's another list of the demands that McCarthy purportedly caved into. And we already read that first one about vacating the chair. The second one is a McCarthy-aligned super PAC, the Congressional Leadership Fund, has agreed to not spend in open Republican primaries in safe seats. That seems very reasonable to me. The Democratic side, I think that would be reasonable on their side as well. The next one is the House will hold votes on key conservative bills, including a balanced budget amendment, congressional term limits, and border security. It's pretty generic. Don't have much to say about those at this point. The next one we already covered about raising the debt ceiling. The next one says move appropriations bills individually instead of passing separate bills to fund government operations. That one to me sounds like more transparency. There could be some drawbacks, but I do like seeing things passed individually in general. Not every time, but I do hate these huge bills with all these different parts that are very hard to follow. The next is the committee representation. We already covered that. Next is cap discretionary spending at fiscal year 2022 levels, which would amount to lower levels for defense and domestic programs. That I already kind of covered previously. Next, 72 hours to review bills before they come to the floor. That really doesn't seem like much of a problem to me. Next, give members the ability to offer more amendments on the House floor. That seems like a win. Both sides should be able to offer amendments. Things should be debated. Things should be voted on. That's more transparent. I like that idea. Next is create an investigative committee to probe the weaponization of the federal government. I thought they were already going to look into this anyway. I don't know why that had to be a demand from these Republican holdouts. I thought Republicans wanted to get in there and talk about the politicization of some of these government entities. And the last one, restore the Holman Rule, which can be used to reduce the salary of government officials. That I don't really know much of the details on. So there's some basic things in there that I think most people would agree with if they didn't know which side was demanding it. But if some people know it's certain Republicans demanding it, they might be against it just because of that, which is unfortunate. So what's next for Kevin McCarthy and the House? Well, we'll see who gets which committee assignments. Then we'll have to see what kind of investigations they start. Are they going to go after Joe Biden? Are they going to go after Hunter Biden? And what kind of legislation are they going to come up with? I don't have high hopes for McCarthy, and I don't expect much out of this House, but that's not saying a whole lot, as that's generally what I think almost every time. I did watch Kevin McCarthy's full speech when he was elected. A lot of it is the same standard aspirational type of stuff. He can't imagine going from the son of a fireman in Bakersfield to leading the U.S. House. Everybody says that stuff every time, and obviously nobody's going to be 7 years old expecting they're going to lead the House. But anyway, he mentions a lot of generic platitudes. He's focused on helping the American people. More of the same stuff. I doubt anything is really going to happen, especially with the Democratic Senate and President. So as always, we will see what happens. But this is just a little bit about what I think. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Kevin McCarthy and the upcoming Congress? Is anything going to get done, or is it going to be more caving into the elite and the corporations, and all about trying to make the other side look a little bit worse than you? Let me know down below, and on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.